Hi, everybody. Welcome to another talk with Karen. I'm Karen from Divorce Workshop. We're gonna have divorce workshop talks today. We have Richard coming in. He's a mediator, and he's going to talk. I want to mention that Divorce Workshop new workbook just separated is coming October, so keep an eye out for that. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Karen.
It's so nice to see you.
It's really great to be back.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you back and to talk about this new venture you're going to be doing. But first, I want everyone just to reintroduce yourself because it's been a while and what you do and stuff.
Sure. My name's Richard Brydson. I've been a family mediator for almost 7 years now, and mostly doing divorce, but also helping some couples and some families reconnect through some very, difficult life circumstances, either, estrangement or almost estrangement, and removal of, establishing boundaries, is a common thing. So relationship coaching is also something that I do, either for individuals or for couples.
Yeah, you had mentioned when we talked, I don't know, quite a while ago when we first met each other, that you had said that was kind of something that you were thinking about and already doing. So can you tell us why you decided to offer this now? We know you're a great mediator, and I know you have a passion to help repair and stuff, but can you tell me more?
Sure. So like it has a lot to do with why I haven't been on the past few months.
Mhm.
So in at the beginning of July, I got a cancer
Mhm.
diagnosis, which is treatable and it's curable. So I've really just been focusing on my health, and in the past couple of weeks, like even yesterday, I had a treatment with an osteopath, and I feel like my old self, like I felt the last time I did one of these lives, and in the weeks leading up to being in hospital there in July. And I'm deciding to share this, but also, want to offer this as a public offering. I mean, I was doing relationship coaching, but it was people that, came to me and asked me if I did this service.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to be, I want to share this and be vulnerable about a few things, because all of the things that I've learned and that have really come to me as important in how we maintain relationships and reconnect, and like focus on ourselves, but also try to do our best and communicate our love when we're upset, like with somebody else, like when we want them to ultimately we want to be able to reconnect with them even though we're really upset.
Mhm.
um all of those were tested, and all of the things that I would do with clients, like had to be put, like into their that they became so necessary, and I received amazing
Mhm.
support from my whole family, especially my wife and my mother, and you know at a certain point it was time for me to give back, and
Mhm.
like being able to reconnect with the sense of hope amidst, like a the diagnosis of a life-threatening illness is not easy at all. And these kinds of things happen in a lot of relationships, and if relationships are already strained by the time there's a diagnosis like this, or like a child gets a diagnosis like this, I mean, it can be what, like ends a relationship, or like brings it so close to being ended. And I would love to be able to share with others, like what I've learned, not just as a mediator, but also in my own life.
Yeah, because the two really, you could really help a lot of people with this, right? Because I know in my own field that once you go through something like this, it's life changing. but the
Yeah,
view of the world changes, right? The way that you view the world. It's not quite the same anymore, if you understand what I mean.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No, like
so,
those first couple of weeks, I mean, I've told a few people now that, like I was before the diagnosis, I was in probably the best, no, not probably, I was in the best physical and emotional and spiritual place that I've ever been in my life. And then all of a sudden, like that was completely rocked.
mhm,
It just like all of the strength, it just wasn't there. Like the body stopped, like feeling any degree of health really. And it was really difficult to connect and stay hopeful and stay, you know, like like communicate in all of the ways that I would want to communicate with those that I care about.
mhm,
And I know that I know that a lot of people go through this. I mean, not necessarily only with cancer. There are lots of different things that can happen in
mhm.
relationships. But yes, I feel like I do know it in a very new way now that I didn't before.
Yeah, we would say it kind of changes your lens of the world. It changes the way you view. And I think that's kind of, for me, I'm wondering if that's what kind of is that major pull that you're having to help others, because of your own what you went through this past summer. Like more so,
Yeah.
right? Like you've already been a very good helper all your life. It's just who you are, Richard. But I'm just wondering if that's even more of a pull for this relationship coaching.
It really is because I mean these aren't just techniques to me, and I'll talk about a couple of them,
Mhm.
like in a few minutes. And they're not just techniques to me. I mean the like I live this practice, and I try to do my best with all of them on a regular basis, and they made it possible for me not only to work with people in like before I was a mediator, I worked with people in long-term care for 8 years. So I mean, end of life issues are not new to me, but even so, to be touched personally by something like this, just like the many divorce coaches out there who are speaking about um, and connecting with people and showing them how to be self-sufficient in the process of divorce because of their own experiences in divorce.
Mhm.
I think that those like not just our professional experience, like either being a lawyer or a mental health care worker. I think that our life experience is like when we really bring it to a point where we've developed insight and we've really come to a sense of peace with our past and what's happened to us,
Mhm.
then we can suddenly help people in a way without without encouraging them or to help them avoid making some of the mistakes that we have, or at
Mhm.
least like learning from them, seeing that like every moment of adversity is also a moment for transcendence. It's also a moment where connection can happen. And that repetition of certain, disagreements or arguments or, feelings coming back to us, like we're being given another opportunity to do it differently.
Mhm.
And I can't think of a better way to look at all of the things that come to our lives that really test our worldview and really ultimately change us in a lot of ways. Like let's talk about how to help us change for the better. And if you're looking to become the best version of yourself, that's like a project, then maybe you'll really resonate with this.
Mhm. So what type of like clients do you have? Like it's divorcing, obviously, that maybe, they're you can work with them to try to repair that, which would be really beneficial for the couple, right? If that's doable. But do you also work with families? Like it would be, my assumption is because from my own experience in my own family, yeah, I think a lot of my family could have had you, Richard, to come in and say, let's try to repair some of this really tough stuff that's been going on. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming families are probably would be major clients, right? As well as divorcing or relationships in general. They don't have to be married, even relationships, right?
Right. and I've done it both ways where there was one of my recent clients. I only worked with him,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and he was having difficulty with one of his siblings, and but it was also like after we started talking, it like all of the things that we were working on, they ultimately impacted how he saw his relationships with all of his family members, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that ability to start to take somebody else's perspective, just having uh, a vulnerable discussion about what's going on in your life with somebody who has, like with me, who have a lot of experience, just, suggesting possibilities of like what other people's intentions could be, or, like just some of the background. Like you tend to hear things that, like are in the background, or at least I ask questions so that the client that I'm working with, maybe they come to different conclusions. They come to different possibilities of, like of how they want to interact with their family.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also done it with, an adult child who wanted to establish boundaries with her parents. Um, and she was in her 30s when she came to me, and then this was something, and I worked with all three of them in session. I worked with her individually first, and then we came all together for a couple of hours, and it was very successful.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, boundaries are. I talk about a lot in grief boundaries as well. Like, but boundaries are. We didn't even put a name on it during my growing up, right? Like we didn't even know boundaries,
Mhm.
right? And it's just been over the last, I don't know how many years, that boundaries are now becoming front and center, right? On how people should be able to have them, right? And it's healthy. But that's a great example, right? Like a 30-year-old who's been, you know, probably fighting or upset with her parents or keeping it down inside, whatever, however she was, and then you talk to them all together and privately or individually, and how you healed a family. So that's really great.
Yeah, like and like, so like a big part of it is helping to somebody to figure out like what in this conflict is mine, and what belongs to somebody else. Like what is, like, so another person is to a certain respect responsible for how they make you feel, or like the reactions that come up. But there's also a component of it that's actually that's yours, that's part of your growth journey about,
Mm-hmm.
like establishing boundaries in such a way that you don't become guarded.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we do become guarded, it's a very natural, state of being to be in, even though it feels quite unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
It's habitual. So getting to a point where, we understand that guardedness is actually, it's actually feeding into more and more and more conflict. And if you really want to get to the bottom of and deal with the root cause of what's happening in a relationship, there's no better place to start with yourself, and doing that self inquiry and finding out, like, this is actually what I want to take responsibility for. And if you walk into a conversation with somebody that you really do want something from, you want something in the relationship, and you start off with saying like, like, I recognize this about the way that I'm being, and like asking questions like, has this been putting you on edge, like the way that I'm being? Like, how has it made you feel? Like, starting a conversation like that, it has the possibility of completely changing the scope of a conflict, or like almost right away. Like it can really be eye opening for them. Like they actually might be quite taken aback. Um, but even to get to that point, you have to really want the relationship to
Mm-hmm.
succeed. And sometimes we get to a point in a relationship with a spouse, or with, like even with a family member, where things have gone on for so long that we're really hopeless about things ever getting better. And that hopelessness or helplessness kind of feeds back into um, our our feelings of resentment that come up, like that we can't express ourselves, that we can't we feel like we're not going to be listened to or have our boundaries respected, so we're not even going to ask.
Yeah. And then they shut down, and then the relationship. I've heard so many stories over the years where, brothers didn't talk and they died,
Yeah.
and there was no repairing, or someone's dying and then the family member comes at the last time, at the last minute. That was me, actually, Richard, to be honest. I didn't talk to my dad for 5 years. He had died, had a sudden heart attack. And that's when, I'm at his death bed crying and repairing there, right? It was too late.
Yes.
But so I'm just saying I have that personal experience of not doing the relationship repair. So I understand
Yeah.
would be a really good thing that would have been beneficial for me years ago if it was available. But so, um, would you work with people that are maybe on the exploring divorce, or is that like kind of another clientele you would have?
That's that's actually where I was gonna go next. So like you felt into that that really well. Is like somebody who's considering divorce. I think that if you really want to know whether or not it's going to be successful for you to continue in a relationship, this process of self-inquiry, just speaking about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do want the relationship to work, you I really believe that you have to walk into every conversation knowing that there's going to be adversity, knowing that all of these feelings are going to keep coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and you know just recognizing that you can that that you really have to own as much of that as you possibly can. And if you feel like that there isn't a possibility of you finding forgiveness, or if forgiveness is a dirty word in a relationship, then any acceptance that you do find will only be temporary. Like until these feelings are dealt with, either through the self-inquiry or through, like vulnerable conversations where you're actually willing to put yourself on the line, then if all of those things sound too scary for you, or you really feel strongly that you don't want to forgive this person, there's really been too much hurt, then all of those things, like to me, they will continue to be there. They're not gonna go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you have to make the impossible choice, is because whichever one you make, there will always be some doubt.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be some doubt of whether or not you made the right one, or if your life had been better somewhere else. That there's no other way for it to be. So I think that recognitions like that are what can liberate us from, like the entropy, or like the lack of motion that comes from really feeling like we don't know what we want,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or that we're afraid of making the wrong choice.
I'm curious to ask this because you're also a mediator, and it just came up, was that when you work with these people that are taking that step to try to repair this relationship, do they ever can they come to a time where it's maybe not really repairable to save the marriage, but maybe the actual, as you said, making that decision, which is very tough, to make that decision to separate or divorce could actually go a lot smoother because they did this repair work, or they did this coaching with you? Is that
Mm.
a possibility?
That particular scenario hasn't come up. I mean, I've done at least one that I can recall, like a trial separation where they ended up getting back together afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and we did do some coaching related to their work, um, as a couple, and also as individuals. But when you're talking about, I really don't. It's a good question. Let me think about it. When people are coming to me for, like a relationship coaching, it could come up that this kind of work really isn't for them. I mean, like the work that I do is pretty deep work.
Mm-hmm.
It does require a good amount of desire to, like to come to some level of ownership over your own feelings, and but also be able to do some really heavy lifting when it comes to communicating, what you want, and sometimes communicating some very difficult
Mm-hmm.
feelings, but doing so in a way that, that you actually want the doing it with the intention that you want the relationship to work, like
Mm-hmm.
connecting with that part of yourself first
Right.
before you go into the situation. And it's not always possible, for
Mm-hmm.
sure,
Mm-hmm.
but then we need to learn how to repair. So no matter what happens with the relationship, I think that these services, like with coaching, can help people come to a point where they're really clear about which direction they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And like they might not agree with that direction at a certain point. Maybe somebody really has had enough. There's been too much pain. But ultimately, for that person to stay in a relationship that is not, for them anymore, it's not going to be good for either person. Like the problems are going to keep resurfacing, and it's not going to be the healthy relationship that, that the person that wants to stay in the relationship can. That it will be unattainable, is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips that you want to give people, or I want to know like what a session looks like? Like, do you generally, is it 2 to 3 sessions, or can it go as long as like, do you find any numbers that like,
Mhm.
do you know, like anything like that?
Sure, sure. When I'm working with an individual, I would say like 4 or 5 sessions is what I've usually started out with. That first conversation that I have with people over the phone, where the free one, I decide very quickly like how many sessions is going to be, worthwhile depending on what their issue, like I mean, what their issue
Mm-hmm.
is. If it's with more than multiple people in their family, then we might need more time. Um, but also, it's we might need more time. But what I want potential clients to know
Mm-hmm.
is that we won't get into a session unless there's a specific purpose for us to get into that session. I do ask for retainers up front,
Mm-hmm.
for the number of sessions that I feel that it will take in order to help them with the issue that's come up in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But we won't actually book that session until I've specifically told them this is what we're going to be working on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it changes the scope of things that you might, perhaps get with a therapist. Is that this is very practical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes when we're talking about meditation and self inquiry, it seems very ethereal, and I would argue that it's quite the opposite. And I have a very practical way of helping people like investigate these things, and it can happen a lot quicker
Yeah.
than I might imagine at the beginning. And then the whole point is for you to get to a point where you don't need me anymore. I mean, this is the best possible scenario that can happen for this work. It's not supposed to last forever. It's
Right.
supposed to be a few sessions, and that's it, because you've figured something out. And if you figured it out for yourself, like if something that I've said is just turned on the bright light,
Mm-hmm.
then you figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that will be with you for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like a very like almost empowering type of sessions as well, like with tools and like kind of, you know, awakening too, like oh yeah, like as you said, there's self-responsibility of yourself too, right? And that's,
Mhm.
that's kind of hard to see sometimes, right? And then you look at how your family or your relationship with your partner or your spouse or whatever. So I like the fact that you're saying like, it's very practical. So it's not going to take, years and years and years of work to get to some enlightenment, to solving some of these issues that are going on.
Yeah, I mean, like, unless your project is like a complete revision of all of your relationships in your family, if there's a fundamental disconnect in the way that all of you communicate, or like you want a really deep conversation, but your parents and your siblings they only want to have surface level conversations all the time. I mean, this is a lifetime project, so I mean, like, it really depends on what you want to do, but for the most part, we need to start somewhere. Like the rest of your life is a series of interactions with people that is really never ending, and and we're just sort of saying, like, see you next time every time. Like there is continuity to it. Um, so I really hope that if you've resonated with this, that like you reach out, you have a free call with me, um, and let's see if we can do some work together.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Richard, just put them in the comment and we'll ask before we wrap up, because we've gone longer than normal, but it's been a really interesting topic and I love it because repair is something that is really important to do. And we know what life is about, right? It can change any moment. And so
Yeah,
um, I think it's great work, Richard. And as I said to you, I think many people could use this because I think there's a lot of disconnected people in the world from friends and family that probably a lot to do with more of the communication and boundaries and some deep wounds too, but that your work would come in to help. So anyway,
right.
it was great to have you back on. I
Thank
hope
you.
to see you again soon. And everybody, just Richard, where can they get in touch with you?
So I mean, my phone number is 647-786-0352. I think we have a question.
Oh, no questions, but your
Okay.
approach is coming from the heart. Thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
Cyril. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
I really appreciate that hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah, great work,
And
Richard,
thank
and
you.
keep in touch. And everyone, thank you, and all the best, Richard. Okay.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll see you again next month.
Yes, love it. Okay. Bye.
Bye.